Well, we're almost done, aren't we? This is officially the biggest review series I've ever committed to, both in length, depth, and overall passion. I mean, Spider-Man I could have done way better. Star Wars, I was only really trying when doing the original trilogy. So here we are, near the end. So, let's get started. Finally, we're back to a large chunk of book loyalty, so we don't have to pad out this section discussing various omitted plot threads. Of course, you got the little nitpicky stuff, or the things that work well in a book but not in a movie, or stuff cut for time. But overall, I'm finally able to put the segregation to rest and only talk about story without having to worry about differences. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is by far my favorite book. I still remember getting the midnight release copy and staying up all night reading it and eating my breakfast to the final chapters. I was only 9 then, but it just represents how invested and adoring I was in this entire franchise throughout my entire life. I'm never bored for a second reading this. I know how everyone likes to complain about how a large part of this book is spent camping, but they're literally on the run throughout the entire thing. To quote the book, what did you expect them to spend the entire thing staying in 5-star hotels? Hiding in the middle of the woods is obviously the best thing to do. Seriously, this book is the darkest, most mature, and brings back all the themes of love and death in the best possible way. It was the perfect book to end this wonderful series, and is one of my favorite novels of all time. 11 out of 10, I guess. For some reason, this is one of the more disliked installments in the series. Most consider it too slow, and that it shouldn't be sped up, and that there's not enough action. Like most of my opinions with the Harry Potter franchise, I completely disagree. I adore this movie. A big element of some of the criticism is that it's only half a story, that it doesn't have much of a climax. I disagree, however. I think this has been the only case of splitting a book into multiple films where it's actually worked. I mean, most of the crappy young adult franchises that have done this were based off of rather short novels that were ridiculously padded out. Seriously, the Mockingjay films are absolute garbage, and don't even get me started on The Hobbit. Here, even though there is a benefit financially, the splitting feels like it comes off from a desire to finish off this story as good as possible, and that the story can translate to the big screen in the best way. There's so many valuable elements that would have been cut ridiculously down for a 2.5 version of this entire story. Nothing would have had room to breathe. True, maybe they could have pulled out an Order of the Phoenix style miracle, but I honestly doubt it. And anyway, seeing that the reaction to the final part, I think everything about this split was entirely justified. First off, out of all the Harry Potter films, I think Deathly Hallows Part 1 has the absolutely strongest opening. The other films either had Harry at the Dursleys having a bad dream or trying to ask out a random waitress. With Deathly Hallows, we finally get an opening centric to all 3 of our protagonists. The main thing here is the brilliantly sad visual storytelling of Hermione erasing any evidence of her parents' connection to her. It's a scene that was only mentioned briefly in the book, but I love how it was brought to life here. It's interspersed with Ron at the Burrow and Harry saying goodbye to the Dursleys, all while the final composer for the series, Alexandre Desplat, whips out a glorious opening number called The Obliviation. It's thematically strong, emotionally powerful by representing the sacrifices our characters are preparing to make, and by far the best opening that this entire movie series presented. Okay, I want to talk about a meme for a little bit. Like this one where it says Voldemort was so pathetic he couldn't even take over a school. Like, what are you talking about? He had control of Hogwarts from the very start of Deathly Hallows. And not only that, he also took over the entire wizarding populace. Ministry is under his entire control, and he's literally using it to spread his bigoted agenda. An entire registry was made for hunting down groups he despised. He's in control of everything. So no, Voldemort is a plenty capable villain. Don't tell me otherwise. I love the camping scenes in this movie just as much as I do the book. Everyone complained about them. As I said before, they are completely necessary. This movie is set up into a completely slow burn that is accurately representing the agonizing uncertainty of the characters. They have a job to do, but they don't know where to start, thanks to being hunted by the larger powers of the wizarding populace. And seriously, I think this movie is starkly beautiful. The way everything looks just contributes to the state of despair our characters are in, and I find the cinematography in this movie to be gorgeous, much better than Half-Blood Prince. We're so much used to the set geography of Hogwarts that now we're just watching them go around the desolate areas in the British countryside, the only places they can't be found, and I love it. The big thing that's able to come from the more somber pace of this film is that you can have it be character focused. The main thing at play here is a relationship between these three characters that have been through so much together. Honestly, of all trios I can think of in popular fiction, this is just the first that comes to my mind. Surely the Trinity of the Justice League or the Avengers is cool, but they came together to lead larger things and teams. With Harry, Ron, and Hermione, it's entirely motivated by the strong, passionate friendship of these characters from the very start. From the beginning, Deathly Hallows Part 1 is entirely taking that in, and it breaks them down in immensely interesting ways. We see their differences, how they sometimes rely too much on Harry for leadership, or on Hermione for knowledge, and how Ron sometimes gets the shaft. He has so much more to worry about outside the mission. When he leaves them, it's also able to work better because beforehand, the film had been focusing on building him up more, taking advantage of the additional time that these films have to explore. But with him now gone, the film accentuates that gaping hole, and there's that absolutely fantastic scene where Harry and Hermione just dance. And it's not romantic at all. That's not what Harry has represented to Hermione, and Harry's just seen her as the sister he never had the chance to have. The way everyone just ships them together, it feels excruciatingly shallow to me. I thought it was rather subversive that the main female character just didn't wind up with a protagonist, but the sideline best friend. Ron and Hermione just complement each other in a unique way that really works. And when Ron finally returns, it's treated in the right way. Hermione is the pure book smarts, but she doesn't manage without Harry or Ron. The movies have upped her as a character way too much on the surface level. I think it's led everyone to exaggerate her abilities. The brilliance of the trio is that they all need each other, and they all need to be together. It's the main emotional core of the movie, and though I think it struggled with previous entries, particularly Ron, but in this one I think they nailed it the absolute best. Even more evidence why this needed to be a two-parter, because all of this wouldn't have had any time to be explored. The standout scene that many point to in this film is the gorgeous and creepy animation that brings to life the tale of the Deathly Hallows. It brilliantly accentuates the mystery of the entire story. The way it starts from a leaf falling into water and how it develops into a realized narrative is astounding. And the story itself is rather creepy and interesting, particularly with the fact that you're wondering how much of it might be actually real. I think the most creatively innovative way that they could have brought this story to life is this, and I love it to death.
Only when he attained a great age did the youngest brother shed the cloak of invisibility and give it to his son. He then greeted death as an old friend and went with him gladly, departing this life as equals.
I have one major issue with this movie. It's not a running plot thread. It's not a character. It's not a technical detail. Or anything. It's one scene in particular that gets on my nerves. This garbage. You know how much I hate shaky cam? This scene is just ridiculous. Maybe it's in there to make it feel chaotic, and holy crap does it succeed beyond belief. This scene is absolutely abysmal. It's what keeps this movie from being a perfect score in my eyes. However, after this brief downfall, things are able to pick back up again in this movie. We get the tense scene in Malfoy Manor where Bellatrix horrifically tortures Hermione. This is our first real exhibition of vile behavior towards Muggleborns in the series, and just goes to make one hate Bellatrix even more. Then we get Dobby in for his sacrifice. This worked so much better in the book because Dobby had been in the last 3 installments. In here, they weren't able to do that because they had decided the Yule Ball was more important, so they threw him in the movie to remind audiences he exists earlier on. And honestly, Somehow, I think his death just really works, irregardless. I mainly feel it's the gorgeous music by Alexandre Desplat. And of course, I've read the book, where it hit harder, so maybe some of that is carrying over. Irregardless, I love this ending. It's on a very somber, emotional note that ties things together, while also cutting to Voldemort finally getting his hands on the Elder One to remind us of the raising stakes. I love this movie. I think it's one of the absolute best in the franchise. True, it's not extremely energetic or action-based, but it's a strong entry in the franchise due to reliance on character and mood. I'm going to give Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 1, a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be back very soon with the finale to this review series. In the meantime, go back and watch the other 6 of my Harry Potter reviews, and please subscribe if you feel sufficiently inclined.